Okay, picture the scenario. You sent the CV out, you put in the application, and they've just phoned you up and they want you to come in for an interview. Happy days. Now you just need to close the deal. You need to get them to sign on the dotted line. How are you going to get them to do that? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be taking you through a few points that may well set you apart from the competition and make the difference between getting an offer and not getting an offer. Before we begin though, of course, we have to deal with the algorithm. Please like and subscribe, please comment, please share it to a friend, please watch the video again when you have an interview coming up so that you remind yourself the key points you need to hit. With the algorithm now satisfied, let's start talking about how you set yourself apart. Often, you'll hear people talk about this concept of T-shaped people. Now, I first came across this concept when I was looking through the management handbook for the Valve company, who obviously made the incredibly successful Half-Life and Half-Life 2. Their management structure is incredibly interesting and is almost worth doing a video on in its own right. But one thing that they make really clear is that they look for T-shaped people, and this is something that you do want to present yourself as. A T-shaped person is someone who has a basic level of understanding of a lot of different things and a deep level of understanding of something specific, ideally the role that they're applying for. And the benefit of you presenting yourself as a T-shaped person is not about can you do other jobs that are not your job. You have to remember that software development is a collaborative process. You are working with a whole bunch of different people from very different backgrounds, and you need to be able to talk with these people, to interact with these people in a way that is going to be efficient and collaborative and inclusive and ultimately productive. And if you have a basic understanding of what other roles do as part of the software development ecosystem, that's clearly beneficial when you're working with people who do those roles as their full-time roles. And so that's why it's really beneficial for you to present yourself as one of these T-shaped individuals. The first thing I'm going to suggest is that you develop a certain level of comfort with business vocabulary. Now, I'm not suggesting that you need to go and read a marketing textbook or something like that. I'm not suggesting you need to know the difference between depreciation and amortization. However, it's very beneficial if you're going to be talking to someone from the business side of a software house to be able to use a certain amount of common language. So knowing the difference between revenue and profit and being comfortable using those, knowing the difference between a direct and an indirect expense and what that means, being comfortable with a basic level of business jargon will serve you very well at the interview phase. Another strong consideration I would give in your preparation for such an interview would be to learn some amount of process. Now, you don't need to know the exact process that the company you're interviewing with uses. And to an extent, whether they use XP or Lean or Scrum or whatever is kind of a little bit irrelevant. But if you are able to talk to your interviewer with an understanding of agile methodology, which almost all software houses use nowadays, or at least be able to pepper into the conversation some sensible process words, that also helps set you apart. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be agile specifically. You can talk about Prince2 principles, Ganting, you can talk about ITIL principles, having a process of process change. But critically, you need to appreciate that as part of the interview, you're not just looking at a particular role. You are looking to present yourself as someone who has a broader understanding than just the role you are interviewing for. Finally, and this is going to sound a little bit strange, particularly if you are interviewing for a role that is not a development role, I would strongly encourage you to develop at least a basic level of some coding experience. Now, this doesn't have to be C# or Java or anything complicated. It can be something as simple as a scripting language. It could be VBA. It can be a bit of MATLAB or a bit of Octave if you want to go open source. But it helps to demonstrate your ability to think in a logical way and break down problems into a series of instructions that can be undertaken. And if you're looking for a role like a BA role, in a way, the kind of way that you think when you're breaking down a set of user stories is similar to the way that you are going to code those user stories anyway. Not mechanically, obviously. I'm talking about the process by which you think and the process by which you problem solve. So what are the other things you should be doing to help you smoothly glide through this interview process? Well, I don't really have anything else to say except for the really obvious stuff. Research the company you're interviewing for, make sure you're comfortable with the role you're applying for, make sure you've done a bare amount of market research. So if this is a company that sells software that is B2C, business to customer, who are the competitors? Have you used the product? Have you used the competitors' products? Where do you see the threats coming from for that company? This is a bit harder to do in the B2B space, the business-to-business software, but is still possible. Finally, the last thing I would say is keep an eye on general news in the software development industry. This is an industry that moves just as fast as any other, arguably faster than most. What are the latest digital trends? 5 years ago, it was self-driving cars are going to be the next big thing. Now, that hasn't materialized yet, but clearly presents its own software challenges. In the video games industry, we see more and more games moving away from single payment models and more into live service models with microtransactions. This has been a trend that's been going for the last 10 years. What about loot boxes? Those were in the news really heavily a couple of years ago with games like Star Wars Battlefront 2. For the industry that the company you're applying to operates in, you should be keeping an eye on news that will affect that industry. Because it's highly likely that even if you don't get asked a question about current events in that industry, if you can bring your knowledge of current events in the industry into your answer for other questions, that is going to set you very well for your performance in the interview. And as Myken would say from Final Fantasy X, that, as they say, is that. And it really is. I mean, aside from that, all I can tell you is general good interview advice, like try and stay calm, try and relax so that your natural personality can come through, allow your answers to simply flow like a river. I hope you enjoyed this content and found it interesting, educational, and so forth. If you did, it would be amazing of you to like and subscribe, at least consider giving me your subscription. With that, the only thing that remains to be said is thank you very much for watching, and as ever, we'll talk again soon.